Hello and welcome back to the Frogs of War podcast. Here to cover all things TCU athletics. I'm Anthony North. That's Russ Hodges. We've got a big show today. Lots to talk about on TCU Sports World. TCU number 7 in the college football playoff ranking, coming off a 41-31 win at West Virginia. First win over the Mountaineers since 2017. First win in Morgantown since 2014. Russ, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good, man. I'm going to be operating on short sleep tonight, flying out to Fort Worth tomorrow morning. Going to be at the Tech game this weekend. My dad's going to be flying down with me. I'm going to be catching up with some buddies and looking forward to a great time this weekend and looking forward to hopefully seeing another big win on Saturday.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. It's going to be an exciting atmosphere out there at the Carter. The big noon kickoff Fox show will be out at TCU campus. That's noon Eastern time, everybody. The game starts at 11. Be on time for the game. Get in the stadium. We don't want to see it too red there. It'll be very interesting to see how the stadium fills up with all of the off-season kind of shenanigans between the fan bases and all of that. There's been a lot of talk. This has been something that the Tech fans have hung their hats on, so that'll be interesting to see. But going back to the West Virginia game, TCU comes away, covers the spread, 10-point victory, but it was certainly more nervous than it probably needed to be. First half looked like TCU really couldn't make any stops on that West Virginia, particularly the C.J. Donaldson-led rushing game. He was just having a field day against the TCU defense in that first half.
Yeah, I thought coming out, when you look at the defensive performance in the first half, you take away the Trey Tomlinson forced fumble, which was a huge play for him, but collectively, just kind of bad fundamental defense by TCU. You saw a lot of missed tackles, especially in the run game. You saw sacks that could have been there, and JT Daniels is not a very mobile quarterback. I think we all know that. There are other guys in the conference that can move a lot faster than he does, but chances to wrap them up for a loss, and guys just, kind of whiffed, and they were able to take advantage and turn those situations into positive gains and first downs to extend drives. And penalties really hurt in the first half. The Frogs had some chances to get stops and get off the field. Instead, penalties extended West Virginia drives. And, I watched the first half, and I didn't really feel like the Mountaineers were doing anything overly complicated. They came out looking to control the line of scrimmage, run the ball with C.J. Donaldson, and they executed good play action off of that. And it just seemed to me like TCU was 2 steps slow defensively on getting to the spots. I thought about a play where a couple plays. One was a run with C.J. Donaldson off the left side where he breaks it down the sideline, picks up about 30 yards, and Jamoy Hodge comes sprinting right through the middle, right through an open hole where there's nobody there, and then he winds up trailing the rest of the play, for the next 5 or 6 seconds while Donaldson's picking up yardage. And then the 4th down play where West Virginia converts on the touchdown pass to Justin Johnson. They have 2 inside slot receivers that run kind of a artificial, it's kind of like a pick play where you get the running back rolling out of the backfield. You have 2 receivers running inside slants to occupy space and take some of those DBs away. But, TCU had 3 guys there. Keon Stewart wound up being late on Justin Johnson. It's a touchdown. He turns to his teammates and is kind of like, was that your guy? Like, was that a blown coverage or just, being slow to the spots? But the offense continues to kind of pick up the slack. I mean, Max Duggan had another awesome, effective, efficient performance. Kendra Miller, after 29 carries the week before, averages about 10 yards a carry against West Virginia. And With the defense kind of faltering in the first half, the offense really picked up the slack for sure.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to pull up Miller's stats here, but I think it was exactly 10 yards a carry on 12 carries for 120 yards. So a big day for Miller to be able to keep his fantastic season going. And yeah, the offense really hitting on explosive plays that never really even giving a chance for the West Virginia defense to settle into anything or give an opportunity to disrupt drives. I mean, we're seeing we've got touchdowns of 71 yards, 51 yards, 30 yards, 29 yards. Those are big plays to be able to go out and take those points right away in those drives. So I would say negatives on the offensive side. There were a couple of sacks taken. That first drive ended with, basically the Frogs had first down deep in the territory. Another sack that pushes them out of field goal range, sets up like a 4th and 18 inside the 40, and ends up a punt for a touchback. So, you end up punting and gaining like 10 yards, 20 yards maybe on the punt. And it's not the kind of start you wanted to have, particularly as kind of the narrative has been building on TCU having these poor starts. I think, into the second half, things settled in a little bit. The defense clearly settled into their game plan. I mean, frankly, the only points surrendered in the second half, there's the terrible fumble call from the punt where there's not called kick catch interference, where there's a Mountaineer standing. He can smell Darius Davis's breath. He's standing so close. And, another Mountaineer bowls over a TCU blocker into that guy standing in front of Davis, runs in, and it knocks Davis. Ball kind of bobbles away, and Noah Daniels, for some reason, touches it, and it's a fumble turnover. And the defense holds steady there and only gives up a field goal. But watching that back, I can't believe that call was made. I mean, just an egregious bad call from the referees. Another one, it seems like Darius Davis has the misfortune of having referees get stuff wrong on against him. That's like the third or fourth one this season. But and then the late touchdown is the only other points that West Virginia scored, and that drive really benefited from a couple of poor pass interference penalties that definitely weren't necessary, that kind of wiped away a sack on that drive, and then the kind of extremely impressive Mossing catch for the third game in a row. We've got receivers making insane plays against the TCU secondary, but other than that fumble that gave the Mountaineers a field goal and that penalty aided spectacular play touchdown, second half the defense again came and gave TCU the chance to win the game.
Yeah, I know Sonny Dykes, just touching real quick on the special teams play that you brought up about the fair catch interference. Sonny Dykes was asked about it after the game, and I guess it's a rule that if players are blocked into the return man as he waves for a fair catch, that doesn't qualify as fair catch interference. I think that's a rule, hopefully, that gets changed, because to me that doesn't make sense. I think if the return man waves for the fair catch, you gotta give him clear view to catch the football. It shouldn't matter if a guy gets, because what Sonny Dykes said is what's happening on special teams is you have gunners and guys who are going downfield and are trying to block players into that return man to hopefully have something like what we saw happen. So Hopefully that rule gets changed over the offseason because it definitely seems like something players and teams could take advantage of. But defensively, I really thought it really just came down to executing the fundamentals better. I thought TCU tackled better. They were able to get JT Daniels down behind the line of scrimmage on those plays that they missed in the first half. I want to say Dylan Horton got Daniels once. Jamoy Hodge might have gotten him as well. But with the offense continuing to roll the way that it was, they were able to get West Virginia in some more obvious passing situations where they had to get the ball moved down the field quickly. And the Frogs were able to sit back in coverage. I know Noah Daniels had a pass breakup. They had a couple other incomplete passes they were able to force. And CJ Donaldson was banged up during the game. I think that hurt West Virginia's offense. They were coming in without Tony Mathis. So at one point they were down to their third string running back in Justin Johnson. But, offensively, just continuing to be efficient. I thought at the end of the game, and Anthony, I'll ask you this as well, but at the end of the game, Sonny Dykes said that they were trying to manage Kendre Miller's workload a little bit because he did get 29 carries in the previous game, but he was playing really well. And you also have guys like DeMercado and Amani Bailey, who his only touch of the game was a 30-yard touchdown. On a play where I really liked that call there because you had a timeout, you could run the ball if you want. But getting back to late in the game, I hated those Quentin Johnston run plays. I know the first one was kind of a fluke because of the missed timing of the snap, and the ball just kind of landed in his lap as he was running across. But I swear that play has never worked. I might be wrong about that. I'll have to look at the numbers and what Quentin Johnston is averaging in terms of yards per carry, but petitioning to have that play scrapped from the playbook. Or if you're going to do it with Tay Barber or Darius Davis. Don't do it with your 6'4", big body receiver who's an excellent route runner with great hands. I would have, again, even if you want to manage Kendre Miller's carries, run a quarterback power with Max Duggan. I don't think Max had any designed carries until toward the end of the fourth quarter. DeMercado didn't see a huge workload. Again, Bailey has seldom been used this season. Didn't like those calls down the stretch. I thought they got too cute and had to settle for some field goals. So hopefully going into this Texas Tech game now against a team that can put up points, you see TCU really buckle down and commit to running the ball, and they can cash in those drives.
Yeah, I think that the drive you're speaking of, it was I was really worried we were going to look back at the end of the game and be like, right here, here's the moment the season flipped in a bad way. So glad we ended up getting points out of that and that it didn't end up hurting TCU in the end. But to set the situation, TCU had first and goal from just outside the goal line. I mean, at the 1 yard line. The previous play, DeMercado had taken it down and gotten a face mask call against West Virginia. So first and goal from the 1, and for that to be the series of plays, specifically to the Quentin Johnston sweep plays, I guess I just don't know why that's the way you would use him as a weapon. I wouldn't want Quentin Johnston running sideways as my best bet to score anywhere or to pick up any amount of yardage. That's not his best attribute, and he's not the best one to run that kind of play. So, like you said, do that with Davis or Barber or one of the running backs coming from the slot. And the other thing is, if you're going to run something kind of interesting there, where was Jared Wiley in this game? I think, we had spent the last couple weeks really talking up Wiley as a huge weapon, especially in the red zone, with his height, his size, his hands, and to not put anything in that situation from 1 yard out. Not only are you not giving it to Miller, who may have been a little banged up, but not giving anything to Max Duggan there, not giving anything to DeMarcado, giving no pass play opportunity. It was a tough series of events, and I think that was coming right out of the quarter end. So to start the fourth quarter, I don't know. I think it may have actually been better that TCU lost so many yards on the Quentin Johnston kind of mishandled play, because it made it so it was a no doubt kick that field goal and move on with the game. But I don't know. It was a key moment, and it ended up not coming back to hurt. And I guess just on the field goals, shout out to Griffin Kell. He's been really clutch for TCU. That one was his easy kick of the day. There in close, but also hit a 46-yarder. He's been, and I'll continue knocking on wood about it, but he's been really a strength for TCU thus far this season, to be able to rely on him to secure the points when they're available.
He's been training with Jaden Obercrom, so what better way to come through in the clutch than training
in West Virginia,
Yep.
in Morgantown in particular. So, let's see, anything else on this game? I mean, I guess just that final touchdown to Sevion Williams. It's the kind of thing that maybe in the NFL, or like if you're playing your buddy in Madden, you just take the penalty and take the win and move on. But I kind of like that TCU went ahead and accepted the points in that situation. I mean, it's only like 20 seconds left. But clearly, as we'll talk about here soon, the style matters, the point spread matters, and putting on, even if it's just in the final score, a double-digit victory on the road looks better than a 3-point victory.
Yeah, I wonder if Sonny Dykes had TCU covering the spread in this game.
Yeah.
I believe it was 7 or 7.5, but it was a cool play to see. Sevion Williams has made that play in a game earlier this season. TCU wide receivers, I want to say between Davis, Williams, Johnston, and Barber, each of them had at least 60 yards receiving in this game. So TCU continuing to spread the wealth. And I know I wrote a little bit about Tay Barber earlier this week. It's just, we've talked about it before on this podcast, about how there are multiple guys who are showing up on a consistent basis. It might not be the same guy every week, but Quentin Johnston's going to give you the juice every week. But we've seen Jared Wiley, we've seen Tay Barber, we've seen Darius Davis, we've seen Sevion Williams. That's what good offenses do. You have guys who may be, second, third options catching passes, who are stepping up and making big plays. And Tay Barber really, I feel like, is super underrated, just for what he's done with this program for the last 4.5 years. The numbers may not necessarily jump off the stat sheet, but the kind of catches that he makes contested catches like the touchdown in double coverage against Kansas. He makes catches that extend drives, had first down catches against Oklahoma, against Kansas State, obviously a huge play in this game. So just those are just kind of winning plays. He's a winning football player. He makes winning plays, and when you have a lot of guys like that who don't make mistakes and don't hurt the team, they just make good, solid football plays. It's just good for the team in general all around.
All right. Anything else on the West Virginia game before we move past it on to other events of the week in TCU football?
I'm ready to get riled up about these playoff rankings. So let's go ahead and
we keep telling you, don't watch the show. It doesn't matter. Don't let it get to you. And then Tuesday night, that Commissioner Boo Corrigan comes out and starts talking about TCU, and you just can't help but your blood boil. And so I don't know, maybe that's just me, but it seems like TCU fans let ourselves fall into the college football playoff trap again. So I guess just to set the scene here, the initial release of the College Football Playoff Committee's top 25 rankings came out Tuesday night, and TCU came in at number 7, which, probably shouldn't have been too surprising. TCU is at number 7 in the AP poll, but, myself personally, I thought that the human body, the actual people making these decisions would review things like resume and strength of schedule and the quality of wins, and that is somewhat different than the way that AP voters might think about things, because the playoff, they claim that it's like up to this point, here's what it should be, not a projection about what could happen or should happen later on in the season. So TCU comes in at 7. It's I should have pulled this up in front of me before we started talking, but it's Tennessee 1, Ohio State 2, Georgia 3, Clemson 4, Michigan 5, Alabama with a loss and no ranked wins at 6, and then TCU at 7. I'll let you roll with it. What's your first thought here?
Well, I think like many TCU fans, the instant reaction is just LOL. Just if I could pull up the disappointed but not surprised meme on my phone, I would do that right now, because I don't think anyone was really surprised to see TCU at 7 after it kind of settled in a little bit. It's discouraging. Not necessarily because of the lack of respect. I feel like that's just kind of the territory TCU's dealing with, being a smaller school. The only when you look at all the teams that are 8-0 right now, TCU being the lowest of the 8-0 ranked teams, and the rest of them are blue bloods. So that kind of speaks for itself. But I think what's discouraging is just kind of the ramifications for what this means for the remainder of the season, because we have a game coming up between Tennessee and Georgia, number 1 and number 3. I can guarantee you, if they're willing to put a 1-loss Alabama ahead of TCU right now, whoever loses that game is still going to be ranked ahead of TCU going into next week. Even if the Frogs win this weekend, they could win by 30 this weekend, which I hope they do, but I'm just saying, TCU cannot really bank on any help from the committee or even these other teams. And I think that's kind of, well, duh, if they go 13-0 and win the Big 12 conference, yeah, how can they be turned away? But I just think about it, well, what if TCU or any Big 12 champion in this particular season were to go 12-1 and win the championship? Would they get in over 12-1 Tennessee or Georgia or Alabama?
Nope.
I don't think they would. So really,
nope.
It's very simple to me from this point on. TCU needs to run the table to get in. If the Frogs, and I'm not trying to get too far ahead, I'm just speaking hypothetically, but if the Frogs were to go 12-0 and lose the Big 12 title game, or go 11-1 and win the title game, I don't think they get in at 12-1 unless.
Yeah, I think we need TCU would need a lot of help in that case. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, and it is discouraging because it basically puts TCU in the same realm as how Cincinnati was watching things happen last season. If we win them all and everybody else loses, then that's the way we get in. And it worked out for Cincinnati last year to get in, but it's a much tougher ask for TCU to even go into this week against Texas Tech and then road games against Baylor and Texas, and then Iowa State. I mean, those are not pushover games that TCU absolutely could lose. There is, a greater than 0% chance that they lose those games. So it's gonna be interesting. I mean, I think we knew this was the situation. We know TCU has. We've all been scarred from 2014. We know that TCU has to just run through it to come away with any respect from this committee. But I think what's the most disheartening about it is just the way that the committee chair speaks about, it ties himself in knots to justify the ranking situations. I mean, basically saying the exact same thing about Ohio State of, well, they're an explosive offense and they had to come from behind to win that one game against the one good team that they played. And so that's the reason why we've put them ahead. But then say, well, TCU had to come from behind to win games, and that's, they fell behind. Like, I don't know. I guess giving this any more oxygen than it's worth is probably a waste of time and a waste of my mental well-being. But it's, I wish there were some more consistent way to speak about it. And I don't know. This guy, this new chairman is going to be just as public enemy number one for Frog fans as the one was back in 2014.
Yeah, I think what bums me out is when you look at just purely based on resume and on strength of schedule. I'll just say collectively these ranked teams have a pretty trash non-conference. Georgia does have a really good win against Oregon, but Ohio State's non-conference is trash. I know Notre Dame was supposed to be good. They're not. Clemson's non-conference is trash. Alabama's non-conference is trash. Michigan's is garbage. And TCU's,
the worst.
And TCU's isn't good either. I mean, Colorado, Tarleton, and SMU are not going to do a lot for you. But what I'm saying is no one really benefits from the non-conference of these teams except for Georgia because they got that win against Oregon. And Michigan up to this point has beaten one ranked team, and it's a 2-loss Penn State, who is ranked lower than Kansas State, by the way. And Kansas State losing to Tulane and TCU, Penn State losing to Ohio State, Michigan, and Kansas State is ahead by 2 spots. I'm guessing because they dominated Oklahoma State, but Ohio State has one ranked win this year against the team that's still ranked right now, Penn State. TCU beat 4 consecutive ranked opponents. I don't see how objectively, just based off of what they've achieved this year, and by ESPN's metrics, that TCU has a better strength of schedule than Michigan and Clemson. I just don't see how TCU is at least number 4 right now. I believe Tennessee is the number 1 team in the country right now. I believe Georgia personally is the second best team. I know they struggled against Missouri, but they have a big win against Oregon. They're the defending champs. That matters to me personally, but I don't see how TCU right now was ranked below Michigan. I don't see how TCU is ranked below Alabama. And I mean, Clemson can make a bit of a better argument because of the wins against NC State, Syracuse, Wake Forest, but I think you have to put TCU above Clemson also. It's just I'm interested to see if the rankings stay the same, if everyone holds going into next week, if all these teams win, I'd be curious to see if there's any kind of movement. I'm expecting that there won't be, but
yeah, the loser of Tennessee, Georgia will drop from 1 or 3 to 4 or 5.
5 or 6, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we were kind of watching this and on the group chat as we're watching, and when it came up that Penn Penn State was ranked below Kansas State. It was like, okay, well, clearly they're going to put TCU ahead of Michigan now. There's no case there's no case whatsoever to have Michigan ahead of TCU, other than the big brand on the side of the helmet. There's the talk there would only go to, well, they're beating teams by a lot of points. Well, they're playing literally the worst teams in college football. Colorado State, Hawaii, UConn, like Rutgers, Indiana. We're talking about really poor competition that, yes, Michigan is handling with ease, but I don't know. If TCU had run that same schedule, they would be telling us how terrible the schedule was and that there's no deserving case. Again, I tried to put the perspective of a lot of this will work out. If TCU continues to win football games, things will play out in TCU's favor. But it leaves no room for anything else as far as the playoff is concerned. Now, as just a football watching TCU fan, I think you have to be a little bit of perspective that, going to the playoff is not the only thing that matters for this season. This season is already a success. This season has continued opportunity to be special. And, Big 12 championship is still on the table, and New Year's Six Bowl, whichever one that may be, is still on the table. And while the playoff is still on the table, that continues to be a stretch goal compared to going out Saturday and taking down Texas Tech.
Mm-hmm. And just a couple quick notes on the poll. I believe Oklahoma State is ranked ahead of Illinois as well. So the committee clearly has some more respect for the Big 12 than the Big 10 in terms of those middle teams. But just some things that I found kind of funny looking at the other rankings, like LSU being number 10 is hilarious to me because LSU, other than beating Ole Miss, has done, frankly, nothing this year. And then,
well, they have a quality loss to number 1 Tennessee, so that's what matters.
Well, and maybe that's why Texas got in at 23, despite having 3 losses.
Definitely.
And then looking at the Pac-12, USC being number 9 and UCLA being number 12 is interesting because they have a common opponent, and it's Utah, who is ranked, beat USC. Lost pretty handily against UCLA, who also beat Washington earlier this year. USC's schedule is hot garbage. If you haven't looked at it, go check it out. But they're number 9, and UCLA is number 12. That don't make no sense. That's if you want an example of brand bias. I know SEC
Definitely.
bias is a common cliche and a common item people like to throw out, but I think it's more about brand bias personally. That's an example of it to me. LSU coming in at 10 right when they have a matchup coming up against Alabama, and Ole Miss being 11
on ESPN, and who runs the
playoff?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens, man. Lowering expectations for these shows, like you said last week. Probably shouldn't have watched it, but with as many friends and people that I know that went to TCU that are connected to TCU, it's hard not to get riled up about it, especially because you're passionate about it. So Frogs just got to take care of business, and it'll all play itself out.
And yeah, if you want to read my late night thoughts on after I put the blog up with the recap on it, so there's plenty of my thoughts there. And yeah, probably going forward, we won't have this level of attention. It's just the first one comes out, and it really sets the table of what's this particular committee thinking about things, and we'll see how it all plays out, and how TCU's position within the national conversation continues forward. I think the playoff committee, I hate it. It's the worst. But I'm super glad that TCU is in this conversation, and there are a lot of people, national media people, who have come to the defense of TCU. And Joey Galloway on the broadcast was pretty baffled by the situation for the Frogs. And
Joel Klatt was pounding the table pretty hard too for the Frogs.
Yeah, so it's good to have some folks in the TCU corner cheerleading on the Frogs. But like I said, focus now for the actual football team. And again, I'll go back to one more thing on the playoffs. Sorry. So everyone's kind of response to negativity about the committee and TCU's place on whatever is, well, just go win the games. Just go win the games. Yeah, the football team should be focused on winning the football games. But as fans, we can have fun with, all this other stuff as well. So moving on to the game, we've got Texas Tech coming to Fort Worth this weekend, Amon G. Carter Stadium, 11 a.m. on Saturday, and it should be a really exciting game, one that perhaps TCU could run away with, but also one that could be seen as a trap game. I think a lot of people pointed to the West Virginia being a trap game, but this one certainly is as well, with kind of the weight of the playoff rankings coming out, and then ahead of Texas and Baylor in the coming weeks. Texas Tech team already with 4 losses, but certainly have given tough games to a lot of people and have a pretty big pelt on the wall with a win over Texas. Russ, how are you feeling going into this Texas Tech game?
Yeah, this is a situation I think now where Tech is 4-4. They're going to be fighting to make a bowl game. Fans on both sides, I think, are going to be fighting for control of the stadium. I know there's been a lot of talk, and if you'd like to call it controversy, so be it, about Tech fans struggling to purchase tickets. That's a whole nother topic. But as far as this game goes, Tech is a team that throws the ball all over the field. They run the ball, I want to say 70%, or throw the ball 70% of the time. Quarterback seems like kind of an issue for the Red Raiders right now. I know Baron Morton has played the last few games. He looked really good against Oklahoma State, which was his first career start, but really, really struggled against Baylor last week in a 45-17 loss. He was 11 of 34 throwing passes. He had 3 interceptions. 3 quarterbacks wound up playing in that game for Texas Tech. Donovan Smith got some run, and he was the quarterback who started the season before Baron Morton did. And then Tyler Show from the transfer from Oregon, who's been there, I believe, for a year now, got a brief run as well. So this is going to be a matchup defensively where we talked about TCU defensively getting off to some really poor starts over these last few games. You might not be sure who you're getting at quarterback. I saw a couple of tweets that Baron Morton is still taking first team reps, and I don't know if they'll give up on him after one bad game, but should he start for Texas Tech, I'd be inclined to believe that if the first few drives don't go their way, he'll get yanked pretty quickly for Donovan Smith or someone else. And it might even be Tyler Show, considering how some of these more pocket passer types like Will Howard and Jason Bean have played against TCU this year. So defensively, it's going to be a test to come out and start strong like you haven't over these last few games. And offensively, I think it's just about keeping everything rolling. I mean, the Frogs are running the ball well right now. I think they can establish with the run. Tech's defense, frankly, hasn't done much all season. I don't see TCU really struggling on that end in this game. But I think this is an opportunity for this defense that has been able to generate some turnovers, but has also conceded a lot of yardage and quite a few points to really make a stand against a team that is prone to turning the ball over, whether it's interceptions or fumbles.
Yeah, on the QB question, I think it'll be interesting. We've talked about in some of these previous games where the quarterback change mid-game due to injury has seemed to really throw off the defensive game plan and what was working. And so it'll be kind of interesting to see if being forced to plan for all three of these guys, whether that helps or hurts. Because, yeah, Tyler Shuck was the named starter to start the season and is probably the more ready, talented passer at this point. And if he's healthy, I would be, concerned about him coming in and doing the Will Howard, where he's able to find the open spaces in this offense that certainly has the ability to be prolific through the air. Morton definitely as well, but just being a freshman, I think there's some challenge there for him to come out and do that again against TCU. And then Smith is that running quarterback. He's talented with his arm as well, but that threat with his legs more so than the other two are. That TCU has actually handled that pretty well. I mean, other than the 2 Spencer Sanders touchdowns, I think TCU has done a pretty good job of containing that running threat quarterback. So I don't know. Whichever way it goes, I think TCU will have something ready for either of those guys. So I'm feeling okay about that. As well, seeing what Baylor was able to do to this Texas Tech defense last week, where Rich Reese just kind of ran wild against them. And, if Kendre Miller is anywhere close to 100%, he should be able to do similar damage and much worse damage to the Red Raider defense. So, like you say, I think TCU being able to run its offense should be able to have success. And as long as you're not falling behind the chains with penalties or bad sacks. You're not, we haven't really seen bad turnovers really this season. Got to keep that continuing as well. I think it will just be a question of, can this TCU defense stop what Texas Tech wants to do offensively, and to be determined, and that'll be the big decider in the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, like you just said, TCU has taken good care of the football this year. Max Duggan is up to 26 total touchdowns with only 2 interceptions and no fumbles lost. Kendre Miller has been sure-handed. The receivers have been pretty sure-handed. Those are the things you can't have happen against those lesser teams, because the longer Texas Tech hangs around in this game, the more dangerous they will become, and the more involved the fans will get. And offensively, the fast starts haven't been a huge question since the Kansas game. The offense has clicked from the jump, but again, we both agree that the defense needs to be able to come out and make some stands early on. And frankly, if the Frogs execute the way they're capable of and the way we've seen this year, penalties largely have not been a big problem. They were a big problem, frankly, under Gary Patterson the last few years, but not much of that this year. Not many personal fouls or anything like that. So it's going to be, I think this can be a heated game, possibly some trash talk. I feel like TCU Tech has a little bit of a rivalry flavor to it, but as we get into our predictions here real quick, I think the Frogs are going to be able to put up a lot of yards against this team, and I see a 49-21 win for TCU, who's a 9.5-point favorite right now with the total at 69.5. 49-21 TCU is my guess. I could see Tech stringing together a couple drives here or there, but I think the Frogs coming back home are going to come out and make a statement in front of the home fans, and the fans are going to bring some juice for this one, so I like TCU big.
Love it. Would love to see that. My prediction on the game is I think there's going to be more field goals in this game than we would like to see, just from the way the TCU offense has stalled a couple times in that scoring area. So I think the TCU offense still clearly gets it done, and I've got the Frogs with a 37-24 win, covering the spread but going under that total. And I think this could be the kind of game. I don't think this is an 82 points we run out of fireworks type game, but I do think that the TCU offense could come out and really put some drives and quick explosive plays to get out to a big lead in this one and allow the defense to kind of just hold firm. I think that's possible. It's also, there's a lot of opportunity for chippiness here where maybe players start getting in each other's heads with the trash talk, like you said, and just don't want anything to happen in this game that for any reason, a targeting call or some sort of ejection that prevents TCU players from participating later in the season, particularly in the next game. So keeping eyes on that. And, I think we're giving confident, positive answers. If this is your first podcast listening to us pick games this season, we're picking the Frogs every week. So it's worked out for us, but I don't think I think there is a world that Texas Tech finds a way to win this game, and it comes in some of the old habits that we haven't seen this season, but that it's in there. Somewhere deep down Max Duggan could throw that interception. Deep down Griffin Kell could miss that field goal. Deep down those offensive tackles want to hold on that play. Deep down that TCU run defense could give up 300 yards to two or three different running backs for Tech. They've got the talent there. So there's no reason to believe that's what's going to happen this week, and our projections reflect as such. But acknowledging that TCU is definitely going to have to go out and fight and go take this game because, like you said, the Red Raiders are really fighting for their season here, fighting for an opportunity at bowl eligibility coming up. So it's a key game, and obviously one that Texas Tech and their fans have circled since summertime.
Yeah, and for what it's worth for anybody watching or listening, the Frogs are 8-0 since Anthony North and Russ Hodges took over this podcast. So take that for what it's worth. And yes, we pick the Frogs every week, and we will continue to pick the Frogs every week. And we're bringing some good luck with us.
That's what it is. We'll take all the credit. Okay, so elsewhere in the Big 12, as we start looking towards the end of the season and how the Big 12 race is going to shake out, bye weeks are over for the Big 12, so everybody is on the slate from here on out. Starting off with Baylor traveling to Norman. Oklahoma is a 3.5-point favorite. This is an extremely interesting game to me. I'm very intrigued by both of these teams. I think that the winner of this game will, by the end of the season, be ranked. I think Oklahoma still has a chance to run the table the rest of the way. I think they're still a really good team, and Baylor as well. I mean, I think we TCU fans are going to be scared of that game in Waco, and Baylor is shown to be a strong team. I think that they've started with a little bit of disappointment, certainly on both sides, compared to maybe preseason expectations. But this should be a really good game, and the winner is kind of still alive in the Big 12 race, and probably can be on their way to being ranked by the end of the season.
Yeah,
I didn't give a prediction there. I'm gonna say I'm gonna give it to the Sooners at home, but I have no idea. I'm just really interested in the game.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll take Oklahoma in a close one as well. I feel like this is Oklahoma's kind of getting their sea legs back a little bit. Got a 2-touchdown win against Iowa State. Dylan Gabriel is back. They run the ball pretty well. I think Baylor has found something though with Richard Reese, who had I think 36 carries in the game last week against Texas Tech. So they were riding that man all game, and I would not be surprised if Baylor comes out and I think every team in the Big 12 has shown that Oklahoma's defense is pretty hot garbage. So this one could wind up being a high-scoring affair, but because of that, I think that favors Oklahoma. I think if the score is low, it's going to favor Baylor, just because I think Baylor can play some better defense. But this will be the game that shows whether or not Oklahoma is actually a good football team this year, and I think they'll be coming out, like you said, with a plan to try and run the table and get to, I think it would be 9-3. So I'll take Oklahoma in this game.
All right, next on the slate is CFP number 18, Oklahoma State against Kansas in Lawrence. The Cowboys are only 2-point favorites over the Jayhawks, which is a very interesting line. I think that's really trying to bait people into taking the Cowboys. Maybe that's an indication that Jalen Daniels is back. The line is just too weird, so I'm going to take the Jayhawks.
Yeah, I think the biggest concern for Oklahoma State, yeah, they got their ASSs kicked by Kansas State, but the injuries I think are starting to pile up a little bit. Dominic Richardson didn't play against Kansas State. Jaden Bray and I don't think Braden Johnson didn't play in that game either. And I think they have some other key guys that are missing. I'm not tied into OK State too much.
Yeah, the center, the cornerback. Yeah, you're right. It's a pretty long list on the injury list.
I think that's probably why this is a close spread, because OK State's battling some injuries. I want to pick Kansas just because I've brought it up before. I don't want Kansas to spoil all the great momentum they had at the start of the year. It's unfortunate what happened to Jalen Daniels, but going from 5-0 to 5-3, I believe this is I feel like this is a must-win game for Kansas coming up with against a team that's kind of reeling health-wise. So I hope Kansas wins. I'll take the Jayhawks.
The next one is West Virginia at Iowa State. Cyclones 7-point favorite at home. I don't know. I guess I haven't really watched enough Iowa State this year. They continue, like we say every week, they continue to get this love from the betting line. I also don't think West Virginia's all that good. I have no idea. So I'll say Iowa State wins it.
Yeah, Iowa State's played well at home. The biggest issue with the Cyclones, frankly, is they have beaten themselves up big time week after week. Hunter Deckers threw 3 interceptions against Oklahoma, had to throw 57 passes because they fell behind, and just turnovers and miscues have doomed Iowa State this year. And what's coming up now as a battle for the cellar. Who's going to be the cellar dweller, the cave dweller of the Big 12 after this week? I'm going to take West Virginia. I just feel like even with a couple injuries. West Virginia has the experience. It's going to be, I don't think it's going to be a 7-point spread. I think this will be a close game, but I just haven't been convinced by Iowa State that with all the issues they've had taking care of the football that they can win a game. So I'm going to pick the Mountaineers.
All right, and the last Big 12 game of the week is a big one. Texas, 2.5-point favorites in Manhattan against Kansas State. I guess it'll be interesting here if Will Howard has fully taken over this job, if Adrian Martinez is quote-unquote hurt still, or if he comes back and takes the reins in this one. Very, very interesting game. Kansas State, I think, has the right kind of team to take down Texas. And if Will Howard is going to be throwing the ball all over the field, pairing that with Deuce Vaughn, it's a scary prospect. That said, I just think Texas has the skill talent that Kansas State's not going to be able to stop. I guess the big matchup here will be, can the Kansas State defensive line get to Quinn Ewers and frustrate him, because they're certainly capable of that. And if they're able to beat the Texas front, I think Kansas State may run away with this one. But outside of that, all other outcomes, I see the Longhorns taking the win. So I would go with them to win and cover that spread.
I am going to take Kansas State just because I think Texas being ranked with 3 losses is hilarious, number one. And number two, Quinn Ewers had a really shaky performance against Oklahoma State. I believe he had 2 or 3 interceptions, was completing about 35 to 40% of his passes in that game, really struggled with the deep ball. And I like Kansas State's defensive line. I think they're going to find ways to get after him. Obviously, Texas can run the ball well. Both of these teams can run the ball really well with Bijan Robinson and Deuce Vaughn. But Kansas State, building off of just a dominant win against Oklahoma State, where it was just no contest. And Will Howard is playing with a lot of confidence right now. And I mean, even if Adrian Martinez is healthy, I don't see how you take Will Howard out. He threw for 4 touchdowns and well over 200 yards in that win against the Cowboys after playing really well against TCU. So playing at home with a quarterback playing with a lot of confidence, I think Kansas State will find a way to win this game.
Yeah, and then it'll be interesting in that case what else happens nationally, but if Kansas State can climb up into that top 10 if by taking down Texas. I think you'd have to think so, especially if LSU takes a loss against Alabama, as we all might expect. Speaking of that, I guess, Russ, do you want to talk about any of the national games this week? There's a few big ones, obviously, that may impact TCU's standing in the playoff rankings. Should TCU win on Saturday?
Yeah, well, Tennessee, Georgia, I think we're both in agreement that whoever wins that game will fall to no less than number 6, depending on what Alabama does. Playing at LSU, I think LSU is overrated, but I still think that can be a game. Alabama has been susceptible to some close encounters with Texas A&M, with Texas losing to Tennessee. So that's going to be a raucous environment there. And Clemson Notre Dame is one that interests me personally, just because I have some family ties to Notre Dame. So I have some family that are ND fans, and a team that really hasn't lived up to preseason expectations. But Clemson has had some slow starts in recent games, having to come from behind to beat Syracuse. But apparently getting a lot of credit for that by being number 4 in the rankings.
It's a good thing.
But they DJ Uiagalelei has been shaky in some games. They've leaned on Will Shipley quite a bit. Um, ND, I feel like could be due for a signature win. If it's any, if this was any opportunity for TCU to get some big time help from one of these teams in the top losing, it would be Clemson going down at ND. I think, to be honest, the chances of Clemson losing at Notre Dame might be greater than Alabama losing at LSU. I don't know why I feel that way. I just do. But I want ND to pull off the upset there. I'm going to take Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman is going to get his first big time win as head coach of the Irish. They're going to beat Clemson.
I've got this. I mean, Notre Dame is also on a lot of other schedules, so I mean that kind of helps Ohio State. It kind of helps USC coming up from behind, but Clemson's got to lose eventually, right? It kind of feels like, we're looking back at 14, that Florida State team coming off the national championship, but clearly not as good in 14 as they were in 13, and just like they just kept winning games. I was like, why do they keep winning? It's against a bad schedule, and I can see that being the way Clemson just kind of cruises its way back into a playoff. It'll be interesting to see, but like you say, that first game doesn't matter for playoffs, doesn't really matter for anything. I mean, neither of them are going to go lose another game the rest of the season, almost certainly, and the winner gets to go play against most likely Alabama, and I think there are very few scenarios that are realistic that see Tennessee and Georgia out of the playoff. So it's tough as one of the non-Tennessee Georgia teams to look at that and think, well, okay, so we're all these other teams are fighting for two spots. I don't know. Maybe that's a little bit fatalistic or down, but we'll see. It's a big week of college football this week, and a lot of exciting things happening. Big game for the Frogs. Big games nationally. You gotta love college football. All right, so we'll hit a few other things here. We're just over an hour in. Lots going on in TCU sports world right now. So TCU women's soccer has hit the postseason and took down a first round win over Kansas 5-1 in the Big 12 tournament to move on to the semifinals against Oklahoma Thursday night. And Big 12 announced its awards. So 10 total Horned Frogs earned awards for women's soccer, 5 on the first team, most out of all of the conference. Had 1 on the second team and 4 all freshmen, plus freshman of the year Grace Coppinger. Unfortunately, Coppinger suffered an injury against Kansas early in that game. And she's a defender, and the TCU defense has been superb. A lot of shutouts for TCU this season, so that's a loss. But her replacement in the game against Kansas came in and scored 2 goals. So maybe it's not all bad, but unfortunate to lose such a high level player here going into the postseason. Speaking of the postseason, so if TCU were to win Thursday night, the Big 12 final would be on Sunday against West Virginia or number 1 seed Texas. And then Monday afternoon is the selection show. So we'll find out where TCU Soccer would be playing in the postseason and perhaps hosting some of those early round games in the NCAA championship. One other news note for soccer, former Horned Frog Yasmin Ryan and her Portland Thorns NWSL team won the championship. She scored, although I think they probably scored it an own goal on a deflection. So Anyway, just wanted to get those in there. Exciting times for TCU soccer team. TCU basketball also held an exhibition on Sunday. Russ, I don't know if you read up on any of this. I was there in the building. I took my kids. It was a free event. It was a really fun, cool event. So, I may have not been watching super intently of what all was happening on the court because I did have my little ones running around with me, giving high fives to Super Frog and all of that. But TCU won by 70 points. I mean, it is an exhibition. It's a NAIA team. My top takeaways from this, first of all, Mike Miles didn't play at all, and Jamie Dixon said in press availability this week that he's nursing a foot or toe injury. So something to watch there. But certainly what we saw there on Sunday, Shahada Wells is the first action we got to see of him in a long time. He sat out most of last season with an injury after transferring from, I think, UT Arlington. And he led the team in scoring and rebounds and really filled that Miles role. Otherwise, the superstars continue to be awesome. Damian Ball, which we don't yet know what's going to happen with his eligibility situation. It's still kind of all of the messaging from TCU has been pretty vague. There's been nothing formal from the NCAA, so we don't really know going into Monday's opener against Arkansas Pine Bluff if Damian Ball will be on the court. But man, he's great. He is a superb player, and if he's not able to go for a significant portion of the season for the Frogs, it's going to be a huge loss. And if TCU is going to make its ceiling that everyone thinks it can, he's got to be part of it.
Yeah. Shahada Wells, I'll go ahead and just touch on the basketball here real quick. Like you said, with Damian Ball's situation still kind of in the wind, you hope that he's able to get back on the floor as soon as possible, but they'll need some backcourt depth. They'll need some guys to step up in that backcourt, and Shahada Wells, a guy who didn't really play last year because of an injury, but at UT Arlington was a high-level scorer and could fill a big-time role this year if Damian Baugh is not able to be out there, because you're pretty young, I believe, in the backcourt. I know you have PJ Haggerty coming in. I don't know how much he'll play. Micah Peavy is more of a defender, more of a combo wing. Could play either the 2 or the 3. Not much of a scorer. So Shahada Wells could definitely take on kind of like a 6th man role, I feel, this year as a leading scorer off the bench. And then some complementary role players. Xavier Cork had some nice plays. I watched some highlights. He had some nice defensive plays in that game. And Jacoby Coles is a player who got, he was kind of like the 9th or 10th guy off the bench last year. Maybe he sees a little bit more run, but 3-point shooting, I feel like, is going to be an area where I'd like to see some growth and improvement from this roster, because I don't think this team really shot the ball efficiently from beyond the arc last year. And you lost Francisco Farabello to the transfer portal, and he was kind of hit or miss at times, but percentage-wise, he shot well from 3-point range. And Mike Miles, as great of a player as he is, was also very inefficient shooting the ball at times. So being able to have multiple guys, including a guard like Wells, that can score and shoot efficiently and effectively is going to be real significant for TCU as they get ready to open the season on Monday.
And yeah, I mean, Chuck O'Bannon was out there hitting threes, and it was one of those, you can see it happening all season, and it's just, you hope Ball is able to play all season, but Ball's vision, he finds O'Bannon, and O'Bannon drains it every time. It's beautiful to watch. The other thing that, I think a couple things that we were worried about coming into the season were forward center depth behind Eddie Lampkin, and I think Suleiman Dombia. I don't know. That's close. And then Jacoby Coles and Xavier Cork both, I think, can fill that role pretty well, at least holding things down defensively. And then Coles has clearly developed a shooting touch as he hit a couple threes from the corner in this one. The other one that we were pretty concerned about from last season that is to watch going forward is free throw shooting, and looked great in the first half. 11 of 13. Everything is wow. Look at their free throw shooting, much improved. Second half came out 4 of 12. So still something to watch, to clean up, obviously, against as the actual regular season begins and against more difficult competition. It's hard to know what to take away from an exhibition like that. I don't know. Maybe some of the refereeing was very interesting. The entire bench got a technical foul after I think a walk-on hit a three at like the final seconds, stuff like that. Everybody's just kind of out there having fun. So hard to take too much away from it. Again, their season opener in Shawmire Monday night, November 7th against Arkansas Pine Bluff. So get your tickets, get out there, go watch this exciting TCU Horned Frog basketball team. Speaking of basketball, we got some news today that maybe Gonzaga headed to the Big 12. We're going to get trips out to Washington to go watch basketball. I'm not sure how much this has progressed, but just kind of a report today. Pete Thamel put out that Brett Yormark, commissioner of the Big 12, has been talking to the athletic director at Gonzaga about potentially joining up with the Big 12 and making what will certainly be the best basketball conference in America even stronger.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because Gonzaga is a West Coast school, so you would think, okay, if they're going to go to a Power 5, why not go to the Pac-12? But this is an interesting. It almost feels like kind of like an inside play. I know the media deal was just the details of the new media deal between the Big 12, ESPN, and Fox were just released. Obviously, that deal with the Big 12 comes before any Pac-12 media deal. Now you have a big brand in college basketball with Gonzaga, reportedly talking about maybe joining the Big 12, which we know Cincinnati, BYU, Central Florida, Houston are on their way. A handful of those schools have real quality basketball programs, and I would be interested to see how Gonzaga figures into that mix. Obviously, with Texas and Oklahoma leaving, would that leave the Big 12 with 13 teams? Would they look to maybe add someone else? Could there be more realignment down the line? But I think it's interesting because Gonzaga is a West Coast school, but they're talking to the Big 12 and not the Pac-12. And I know there's been a lot of dialogue with all this conference realignment in football and basketball about, are we heading to 4 super conferences? USC and UCLA, we know, are leaving to the Big 10. Are Oregon and Washington going to skip out? What's their media deal going to look like? Is the Big 12 going to scoop up the 4 corners? I mean, a pretty wild story. I think it would be, I would love to see TCU and Gonzaga square off personally. I think that would be awesome. And for Gonzaga, I think the money would be kind of ridiculous if they moved to the Big 12, but I'm sure those
the money, the exposure, the competition. I mean, yeah, they play some tough games in the non-conference, but pretty much from, I don't know, December until mid-March, they're not playing a game that anybody nationally cares about at all. And if they were to join the Big 12, they'd be playing games every night that everyone nationally would have to tune in. I mean, playing against TCU, Baylor, Kansas, Houston, BYU, on and on. I mean, it's another level that I think it does make a little bit of sense. Obviously, the logistics of trying to get from, I don't know, from Cincinnati and Morgantown and Orlando to Spokane, Washington is maybe a little bit tough.
That doesn't seem like a pleasant flight. I know with today's technology and today's airplanes, it may not be that bad, but
air travel is great.
Yeah.
And yeah, so you touched on a little bit the media deal. I think, it put a little bit of Brett Yormark absolutely has come in and gotten this done. And, it's hard to know how much his influence made this happen, but I think there was so much chatter from West Coast media and SEC media of, oh, well, the Big 12 is dead and they're going to be getting like $10 million per school per year. And why would anybody want to broadcast their product? Nobody watches, blah, 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 on and on. Stu Mandel just can't let it go. And finally, the deal actually gets done, and it's more money per school than when Texas and Oklahoma were in the conference, and certainly probably double what all of those kind of pundits were speaking to. And after all of the shares from NCAA tournament and bowls and playoff and all of that, likely to push a per school payout of over $50 million. Now, obviously, we're not talking SEC Big Ten money, but that puts the Big 12 right in behind that and ahead of all of the others nationally. So it's really just good to see that there is clearly Fox and ESPN have put a high priority, a high value on the product that Big 12 will continue to put out. Very competitive conference in football and basketball, where pretty much any game that you put on any of your platforms will have some interest, some intrigue, and will be a competitive contest.
Yeah, and right now in football, you're seeing that the Big 12 can be competitive without Texas and Oklahoma. I mean, Texas, sure, they're ranked with 3 losses, but Oklahoma's got 3 losses, and with TCU, Kansas State, and Oklahoma State being the 3 highest ranked teams in the conference, Central Florida, I believe, just cracked the top 25. Cincinnati just last year was one of the best teams in all of college football. BYU is usually competitive every year, so it's been good football to watch. A lot of close spreads, as we've talked on the podcast before, and it's going to be even more competitive in basketball, in my opinion. And what I'm excited about is, I believe Brett Yormark said, even when these new teams join, the conference is not going to split into 2 divisions. It's going to stay just one conference. There might be some situations where one school plays another school twice, and maybe they only get the other school one time. But I like that personally a lot more than having 2 divisions, because I feel when you have 2 divisions, then you have situations like you see in the Big Ten and the ACC in football. Not so much the SEC right now, because Georgia has been awesome, and I believe Tennessee is in that division as well, but you have one division in the Big Ten with Ohio State, Michigan State, and Penn State, and then you have the division on the other side with Iowa, who can barely score 10 points, and Rutgers, and it's
yeah. I mean, at least Illinois is like respectable this year, but still, if that's the best you're running out,
right?
I don't know.
I like how in the Big 12, you're forced to play everybody. I've talked about it before, and going from 10 to 14 teams is not going to change that. And I think that's really cool, because even if you're not getting everybody, you're still going to get the majority of the teams in your conference, and you're still going to have a better idea of who really the best teams are in the conference by the end of the year, as opposed to playing the divisional format.
Yeah, and you see it in the Pac-12 this year, where they have gotten rid of the division structure for purposes of their conference championship. So it will just be the top 2 teams, and it's already, you're seeing the kind of it makes the race much more intriguing because the Pac-12 championship game could be USC versus UCLA or Utah. So where before, those teams, only one of those teams could go to that conference championship. So I agree. I like that layout. I think it guarantees better games and keeps the excitement throughout the whole season. All right, I think we've hit it all here, and it's a lot. So exciting times in TCU sports right now. Can't wait for this game Saturday. Can't wait for basketball season to start. Can't wait for TCU Soccer going into the postseason. TCU volleyball is racking up wins in the Big 12 and sits just behind the big heavy hitters in the conference standings. It's exciting times for TCU sports, and happy to be able to cover it all. And hopefully really appreciate all of you listening, reading to everything that we have on frogsofwar.com, following us, Twitter, Facebook, everywhere. Subscribe to this podcast. Go catch us on YouTube. And hope that you're enjoying everything that we're putting out, and really thank you guys for sticking with us. And that's all I have. I'll hit them with the Go Frogs.
Heck yeah, Go Frogs! Pack the stadium Saturday. Looking forward to getting down there tomorrow. Going to be hanging out with some friends and some Frog fans, and might be talking a little talk in the stadium. We'll see how it goes, but looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun game. Bring the energy, bring the juice. Let's walk away with a dub and get to 9-0.
Absolutely. Thanks, y'all. Go Frogs.